Good afternoon, campers. We're about to go to afternoon swim, followed by arts and crafts and a nature hike. And so the fun is about to begin. I really want to welcome you wholeheartedly to our second annual National Invitational Summit on Digital Equity and Economic Inclusion. And as you'll see, we have a very full and very exciting agenda. But first, I want to introduce Donna Harris-Aikens, who is the Senior Director for the National Education Association. And I'll say a little bit more about her in just a moment, but just so we all can give her a round of applause and thanks for making this gathering possible here. And they've extended extraordinary support for this gathering for the second year in a row. And so, Donna, if we could please thank you. And if I could say also that Donna is the Senior Director at NEA for Policy and Practice, which is the primary policy center at this National Association, and they focus on student-centered issues. And for those who might not know this, NEA is an extraordinary powerhouse of a cornucopia of exceptional initiatives around improving learning opportunities for all students. And Donna is providing crucial leadership in that work. And so we're very deeply honored to be here in this building and with your blessing. So Donna, if you could please kindly join us. Thank you to give welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone. So while you all are enjoying your lunch and we're getting the program started, I just wanted to welcome you all to the National Education Association. You are in our house. So if you need anything, let us know. Restrooms, hopefully you found it in the back to the left towards the elevators. If you need something else regarding refreshments, also let us know that. And we're very happy to have you all here. This is one of those issues that sometimes gets shoved to the side because of things like, elections or little things like that. But it is one of the things that continues to drive interest, drive concern, and drive some of our equity conversations. When we think about what kids do and don't have, depending on which neighborhoods they're in, depending on which schools they're in, depending on what communities they're in, this tends to be one of those issues that connects everyone in the community around an issue that everyone can understand and everyone can help solve and everyone can help be a part of finding the solutions that work in that local community. So thank you all very much for being here. We do want to thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for spending the time here today and tomorrow to help dig into some solutions that actually work for students and for communities and for all of you, hopefully. And so this has been truly a labor of love. I see a couple of colleagues in the back, and we've got a couple more coming out of some other meetings that are happening here in the building today. And we look forward to spending the next couple of days really thinking about what it means to be part of this joint endeavor and what it means to be part of solution finding and solution making as this work moves forward. So thank you very much and take care.
Thank you so much again, Donna. And that was a perfect segue because, as Donna was saying, this is really going to be very much a working gathering. And so we're expect to roll up your sleeves and put your aspirations and expertise to work. We're hoping to really move a national agenda together to eliminate the digital divide as a barrier to economic and educational opportunity for all learners in the country. And we think that this is really eminently doable now. And urgent, as you'll see. So just to provide a quick frame for the next day and a half. First, of course, we want to thank NEA, as you know, for hosting us. Also want to thank our sponsors for making the gathering possible. So we also want to thank our partners for getting the word out. You'll see there's a long list of summit partners. We also want to thank our presenters and panelists and facilitators and recorders for each of the work groups. And they and you will be doing a lot of heavy lifting together to really come up with strategies for addressing several key challenges. Oh, and also I want to thank Dustin and his colleagues at the Internet Society for kindly doing live streaming of this event. And last and not least at all, I want to thank each of you for giving of your time and your spirit to dare to hope and aspire to really making a significant dent on the digital divide. So really quickly, we're in a historic moment. I don't think that's overly dramatic to say that, in that banks and foundations have unprecedented opportunity to invest in digital equity at scale, as we'll discover in the next day. And so, as banks, for example, and regulatory agencies, the banking regulators look at Community Reinvestment Act policy and how to encourage investments in digital equity, one of the key issues in this is, what do we mean by digital equity? Is it broadband and devices, or as some of us sometimes say, cheap boxes and wires? Or does it need to be a little more multifaceted than that? And our position at the National Collaborative is that the approach needs to be systemic. And you'll learn later today and tomorrow about some research that's been done, particularly by Molly Zilzinski and Linda Darling-Hammond. They did a meta-analysis, which is research jargon for, they did research on research to find the most robust findings about investments in technology for educational opportunity that most succeed for highly at-risk students. And they came to the same conclusions that we're talking about here, that the essential food groups for digital equity are broadband and devices and tech support, as we've seen, timely tech support, personalized tech support, also high-quality educational content for economic inclusion and financial literacy in a CRA, Community Reinvestment Act context, and also, not least, support from librarians to help low-income learners navigate the digital world and to find the resources they need for their personal priorities. And so you'll see a lot of librarians in the room today who are very experienced at a national leadership level, and they bring very exciting expertise to this. So one of the pieces we're saying is that as we define digital equity and develop a shared definition of what does that mean to invest in digital equity, is it enough? Is it acceptable to just invest, for example, in mobile hotspot devices or in just affordable broadband via cable discount internet program like Internet Essentials? And our experience is those are clearly, access to broadband is of all the food groups the most essential, but the others are equally important if you want to have impact. And one of the themes you're going to hear us return to multiple times is that we are urging the Community Reinvestment Act ecosystem, and all of us in this room who are involved in this or would like to be involved in this in various ways, we want to encourage thinking more overtly and explicitly about how we can move from compliance to impact. Because there is a lot of impact that's happening. It's not well documented. It's hard to discern the effective strategies, the promising and proven Community Reinvestment Act strategies. You'll see the research and evaluation work group will be addressing that. And we'll go into the other work groups and their key pieces in a moment. So what we're looking to do as key challenges are, again, we want to look at how can we foster a research and evaluation agenda to produce more empirical knowledge about what works in community reinvestment broadly, and also more specifically in digital equity in support of economic inclusion. Does this make sense so far? And as those who know me well know, this is my slow setting. This is me on decaf all day. So I'm trying to slow down, but it's not easy. So I'll try to behave up until about 6 o'clock tonight when it just all bets are off. So I'll just be talking really fast then. A second piece is foundations and banks. One of the themes we want to propose for your consideration is, and to see if we can come up with strategy to do something about it. In the last 42 years, banks have invested approximately $3 trillion in community reinvestment. And foundations and education and grant makers for education, we have some colleagues here from GFE, Grant Makers for Education, several colleagues here from that group. And foundations have invested a lot. So education foundations have invested billions of dollars in the last 4 decades on educational opportunity, educational equity. And banks and others in the community reinvestment field have invested trillions of dollars in economic opportunity in high poverty areas. And yet certain problems persist. And we see, for example, the rates of upward mobility from a low socioeconomic status up to middle and upper income, those rates have actually declined. They've worsened in the last couple of decades.
We've seen that there is difficulty in filling living wage jobs, and we see but everywhere you look, you see banks making investments and community development finance institutions making investments, and municipalities and others doing lots of great work on economic opportunity. But one of the barriers that's faced if we focus only on economic inclusion is that we're not also addressing in an integrated way the educational opportunities that need to happen to feed into those pathways into living wage jobs. Equally, for the foundations that invest in educational equity, one of the challenges we have for you is to work with banks that are making economic inclusion investments, because as every educator in the room knows fluently, that it's extremely difficult to open up for educational opportunity for students if there's no economic hope. If they're growing up in a context of poverty, intergenerational poverty, we're dealing with often very traumatized learners. And it's a constant Sisyphean battle to roll the stone up the hill and get a student to the point where they see the point in persisting in school. Poverty and economic inclusion on the one hand, and educational opportunity on the other. What we're saying for that work group B is, how can you work together? Can we stimulate some investments there that are together to see if we can work at this problem and solve economic and educational opportunity at the same time, and see if that is not a more effective approach than doing this in silos. The third major challenge is that there's some work that certainly the National Collaborative for Digital Equity, which I co-founded with my esteemed colleague Paul Resta from University of Texas, Austin. The National Collaborative is very nonprofit, and one of our strategies has been to hold statewide summits, to mobilize multi-sector teams in CRA-eligible communities, to identify local barriers to all the key dimensions of the digital divide that we know matter, and then to say, okay, how can we help provide them with connections with many of the folks you'll find in this room also who are resource providers in broadband devices. So for example, Sage Sustainable Electronics we've just gotten CRA credit for the first time with an FDIC reviewed bank in New Hampshire that's providing under CRA funding for the refurbishment of devices and donation for them to low-income learners as a precedent. So there are examples around devices. So that's part of a statewide approach where we're mobilizing community teams and a statewide network of community teams in LMI or low and moderate income communities. And we believe that the statewide mobilization strategy is looking very, very promising. We're seeing a lot of traction gained in New Hampshire, and because that's now in the beginning of its second year, we're seeing more traction there. And we just started a similar process in Massachusetts with a kickoff at the Boston Federal Reserve in December, and we're already getting some early gains there. Another challenge is sustaining funds for local tech support and librarian support. Those who are familiar with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and also many of the tech support providers who are in this room today will tell you that the work that they are doing, the tech support providers and the librarian support providers are doing this really important work, highly impactful, very cost-effective work on starvation budgets. And can we do something about that together so that we can provide sustainable, modest funding goes a very long way. And we've got a lot of leaders in the public and state library world here and school library world here who have been doing this work on nothing for 25 years. And so that's a piece of this. Another piece is improving collaboration among digital equity and economic inclusion resource providers. One of the things that's really struck us is how siloed all of these efforts are for people living in poverty. And if you've been an educator in a high poverty context, you'll know that there's a whole movement in schooling called trauma-sensitive schools. The folks that were hoping to benefit with economic inclusion are almost invariably traumatized by poverty. It's harder to learn when you've been traumatized by conditions that correlate, that don't always go with poverty. And there are certainly many people with persistence and grit and courage who lift themselves up and out, but it's a heavier lift, right? And so one of the things we're saying is that resource providers, we need to make it easier for them to come up with a mental map of how to make sense of all these disparate silos coming at them. They're getting handed one-legged stools everywhere they look. You'll hear that theme again, that the one-legged stool approach to helping people in poverty is not working. Letting somebody who's trying to piece together 6 different social agencies in this public library, in that hospital, and this, elder care, and piecing it all together, all while you can't buy diapers for your kids the last week of every month. And then you worry about broadband, and then how to get a device, and how do you learn how to use it, and. So we need to do a much better job of co-branding and working together. So if you're providing tech support, know to say something about the librarians and the libraries that can help right down the street, right? And the banks that are doing great work in economic inclusion. We need to help each other do a better job of educating those living in poverty. Does this make sense? I wish this was exciting to me. I'll try to calm down. It's not going to be easy. Okay, the last piece is that one of the things that we learned when we first knew that our advocacy work, that Paul's and my advocacy work with colleagues in San Antonio back in 2013 to 2015, had an impact on persuading the Federal Reserve of Dallas to open up support for the first time under CRA for digital equity. And the pilot fizzled because the person who was going to lead that charge was the mayor, and he was offered and took the job as secretary at HUD, Julian Castro. But to her infinite credit, Jordana Barton with the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas took that message from that pilot and took it all the way up the Federal Reserve system to get the blessing to publish in 2016 a seminal document about digital equity as a framework for meeting CRA obligations. And that really began our whole journey. One of the things that we found in pulling together partners to begin educating bankers and non-bankers about how to work together is we realized that we need to help non-bankers know how to set realistic expectations when they approach banks, to understand the constraints that banks are under, both as a business model as well as regulatory compliance, and the need for everybody to be very incremental and modest and baby step in our approaches. And when you think about the scale of CRA, that's very counterintuitive and hard for non-bankers to understand, but one of the things we'll urge over and over again is be incremental with this work. Okay, so that said, just next steps are you're going to hear from Krista Schonk is very kindly going to introduce Barry Whitus, who's our keynote speaker, and Krista is the Vice President for Regulatory Compliance Policy at the American Bankers Association, and she is, I want to make sure I get your alma mater correct here, because I know them's fighting words if I get it wrong. She earned her bachelor's and her JD. She earned her bachelor's from Bridgewater College and her JD from West Virginia University, and brings a lot of expertise. She was previously Associate General Counsel for Freddie Mac. She's been in this work for a long time, not a long time, but a lot of quality experience. And she's doing extraordinary work with a group called the CRA Working Group, which is a national network of CRA compliance leaders across the country. And it's really a privilege that you're here and an honor. And if we could pass this on to you. Thank you, Krista.